Hey, welcome back to the podcast. In this episode, we are joined by friend of the show, Greg Genter. You might remember that Greg is a previous guest who joined us on episode 33 to talk about grouplessons.com and his group piano system called Piano Express. We really explored his model of teaching. And during that episode, Greg made an offhand comment about how his studio no longer does trial lessons. And Nate said, hey, we should have you back to talk about that. Now, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know Nate says that about 3 or 4 times every episode. But this time, we actually are going to follow up on one of those. I think this is an interesting topic to explore because for as long as I've participated in music teacher forums, music owner forums, the Facebook groups, all that sort of thing, the debate has raged on about how best to onboard a new student. There's one side that says you shouldn't undercut your business's value by giving away your product for free. You have another side that is doing some version of a free trial lesson, but has a lot of questions about how to make that work economically, especially if they're a bigger school. Like, do I pay my teachers for the trial lesson? Do I make them kind of foot the bill? Do I pay only if they join? All these questions that kind of swirl about. Then you have alternative systems like the 30-day lesson pass, things of that nature. So today we're going to explore all of that. And we brought on Greg because he has a studio that has a high capacity to bring in a lot of students quickly because of, again, that unique group piano system. When you can see 12 students with just one teacher, you have more of a capacity to bring people in. You don't have those usual roadblocks that you have when you have to hire teachers. And so Greg had this unique challenge. And so Greg, I want to just start out by asking a really simple question. What is it that your studio does?
Simply, we have designated time every week for what we call open house. And I was considering doing it once a month or maybe once a week, but we have through the year, we have had enough interest, people coming through our sales funnel that it's been necessary for us to carve out time. So every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. to 8, we have a half an hour where we stop classes. All of our teachers are free and we open our doors to anyone in the public. We do invite walk-ins. Most of the time people call ahead. And then we do the same thing on Saturday afternoons at 1 o'clock. So from 1 to 1:30. So Tuesday nights, Saturday afternoons, every week we do an open house. And that is how we engage people who have already gotten a referral from us or they've come through part of our sales funnel. We'll talk about sales funnel, but this is how we really close the deal. We make that link from they've heard about us, they're interested, to they're signed on. Okay.
Now, I was fortunate back in June of this year, 2022. Obviously, Greg and I are really old friends going back just over 20 years now. So Greg and I have been hanging out. I've seen Greg's studio many, many times. I came in June of this year, went to Greg's studio, actually got to watch the Saturday open house in action, had a few new students that came in. So I've had a chance to observe how that open house works. But I'm not going to steal your thunder, Greg. Could you tell us how your open house works? Just the facts. We'll probably get into later why you do it this way, but how does the open house work for you?
I recently recorded a video of me just running an open house, and I think it's going to be possible for you guys to include that as an extra link in this podcast, so people can actually watch. If you have 30 minutes to burn, or watch at double speed, you have 15 minutes to burn in your life. I mean, you can actually see one happen in real time. We bring students in. The first thing that I do is I get down on eye level with these students and I learn their names. I say this in the video extra, but I'm really not good at names. I struggle to learn people's names, so I really try as hard as I can to pay attention when they say their names. And then in the next minute or 2 minutes, I will repeat their names as much as I can. I hear myself say it so that it's at least in my mouth and in my head. I sit the students down. I get them hands-on. I pay a little more attention to the students at first than I do to the parents. Once the students kind of get the hang of a simple song and our software, we do turn on our software and show the parents how to use it as a teaching tool at home. I turn my attention to the parents. I talk to the parents about our program. And then I talk about scheduling, answer their questions, and that takes about 30 minutes. That's in a nutshell. That's how it happens. And there is strategy and a lot of thought that has gone into every step. And then for what it's worth, for people that are training to be Piano Express teachers, the people that are in our licensing program, I have what I call an open house script. I like actually write out, like, here's what I say, here's, in sequence, so that anyone training to be a Piano Express teacher, they can just follow what we do here at our studio.
Interesting. Okay. Now you talked about that strategic element. You mentioned that you have a sequence. Before we get into that, I do want to acknowledge something. Greg's school, it's obviously a one instrument school, a one program school. So they teach piano, they do it in this group system. I think one of the values of having kind of a community of contributors here, obviously Nate is much bigger the contributor. I am going to flip it over to Nate later in this podcast, because Nate actually uses an open house system at Brooklyn Music Factory, but they're obviously a multi-instrument school, a multi-program school. And I think it'll be really valuable here in just a few minutes to have Nate talk about the similarities to Greg's system, similarities to Greg's strategy, and then differences as well, so that anyone who's listening to this episode, whether you have a single instrument school, you have a multi-instrument school, will get value out of this. So I do want to acknowledge that. So if you have a multi-instrument school and you're thinking, yeah, but how is this going to help me? I think just between Greg and Nate here, we're just going to cover the entire gamut. So just wanted to acknowledge that. So Greg, why use open houses? How does this contribute to your school growing bigger versus all of the alternatives that we mentioned before? 30-day lesson pass, trial lessons, a consultation on the phone, et cetera, et cetera. I'd love to hear this.
All right. So do you guys play chess, at least on a hobby level? Okay.
I know how to do it.
you know how the pieces move. Okay, now I'm not a chess master, but chess masters talk about opening sequence, mid-game, late game. Okay? And I think marketing has a lot in common with that. I'd say the opening sequence would be like the ads that you put out there, the advertisements. And the mid-game would be like your website. You're driving traffic to your website and you're trying to get people to contact you. Okay? By the way, I'm spelling out in a nutshell here a sales funnel, right? Ads, drive traffic to a landing page, get people. The whole point of your landing page and your website is to get people to call you, email you, contact you, text you somehow. But after they text you, late game. Okay, late game. How do you get from I'm winning this game to checkmate, this game is over? That is, for us, that is where we do our open house. I say our open house is a late game. Our open house is not the end all be all to our marketing. Our open house would not be very effective if we didn't have a sales engine driving it. Okay, so we do have ads. We do have landing pages. We have people contacting us, and we invest in those things. And so we have people constantly contacting us, and that's not accidental, and it's not free of charge. We're not just lucky to have fruit falling from the tree and hitting us on the head. We invest in that, and so that's part of our strategy. But after people go through those first two steps of the sales funnel and they've actually contacted us, we want to close the deal. So I see this as an engine as well. And like I said, people talk about sales engines. And I used to do trial lessons. And we did trial lessons in groups. And there were a couple problems with that. And there were a couple places where the engine wasn't working, and I realized I needed an engine upgrade. We needed to take this engine out and upgrade to a new one. And part of some of the problems, parents of these new students would come into a group lesson and they would watch, but we were so invested in the students that are already bought in. Like, I, in the back of my mind, know this trial lesson, yes, they're a VIP, but they're not bought in. I don't want to take time and attention away from my paid customers to talk to this parent too much about our program, because there's a live class happening, and in group lessons, there's just so many needs. And so the parents didn't really get all their questions answered easily, nicely. If I take too much time to answer all their questions, it's at the expense of the class. And if I take too much time investing in the classes, it's the expense of the parents. Like, they see all this stuff happening. The Piano Express, one of the very unique things that we have is an online tool that we use in class and also as a practice tool at home. And we want parents to understand how to use it. But I found that it was at the expense. It was like a tug of war, like who gets to win in this group lesson, and someone was going to lose. And it got to the point where I got an email complaint right around the January, February, March rush. You know, that we get the beginning of the year, we get a new influx of people that are interested. There was a student who joined November, December, and they were in a beginner class. And then boom, 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 like 3 or 4 weeks in a row, there was like a new trial lesson every week. And so that class was kind of watered down 3-4 weeks in a row, and the parents started to notice. And I started to see that we were getting so many new students interested in our program that our beginner classes, and it wasn't just that one class, it was all of our beginner classes. They were all subject to this invasion of trial lessons. And so I started to think, I really need to parse this out. If people are bought in, they need our undivided attention in a class. And if people are still on the outside looking in, checking us out, they need our undivided attention so we can talk to them about the program. And so as soon as I split, like, man, if it's not broke, you don't fix it. I did feel like it was broken, and I do feel like now it's fixed.
Why not just do a one-on-one lesson with them for that trial?
Okay, one-on-one lessons. And I know a lot of teachers are going to do trial lessons if you're doing one-on-one. Now, if you're not doing group lessons, it would be simpler. And that would be a solution. I don't think there's anything wrong with that for small to mid-small size studios. For me, it boils down to time commitment. I commit 2 half-hour chunks a week, and I can see 10, 12 new prospective students. Last week, I'll just be honest, we onboarded 9 students in a single week, and I committed 2 half-hour chunks. Yeah. And if I saw them all one at a time, that would be 4.5 hours. So for me, it's just a matter of efficiency. I can get the same, I can meet all my goals, and my goals are to communicate our vision to the parents. And we are going to talk more and more about this, but to also reassure the parents that they can trust us on the staff and our program. Just reassure their trust, communicate values. Those are the things I want to do. And I can do it in groups. So one-on-one lessons, if I was only seeing 2 people a week, then that would be 2 half-hour chunks. It would work. But as soon as you go over more than 2 prospective students a week, then an open house model is just going to save you time. And time is money. Like, I can't afford to block any more time for open house than I do.
Before we jump into like that sales engine and deeper discussion of the sales funnel, I actually want to kick it over to Nate and see what he's heard so far. And I wonder, Nate, if you have any questions.
Yeah, I do. I got a pile, but I'm gonna sort of try to feed them out over time, Greg, because I want to start with the last comment you made, which Daniel and I talk often about. It's like your most valuable resource, is time. Then shortly after that is money, and then I sort of put creative intent. Your intellect and creativity is in there too. We think about it in kind of 3 resource buckets, but. At BMF, we did a super deep dive into the free trial model. And as you know, we do both group lessons and we do one-on-ones. And we're actually, we closed that down recently. And we are reinvigorating our open house model, which I love listening to you talk about your model. I have some questions there. And one of the reasons why I closed it down was because of exactly what you're talking about. The amount of training that went into all of our teachers, because of course we couldn't, a school of our size, we couldn't afford to just see 2 trial lessons a week. One of my questions for you, dude, is who's on your team to do these trials, and what are the different roles and responsibilities? That's my first question for you. I want to know, I know because you have a multi-teacher system in that group class, who else is engaged in that 30-minute, and what are their responsibilities?
Okay, that's a good question. So teacher training is something that the Piano Express has absolutely refaced this year. One of the things that we are on a mission to do right now, this is off subject, but we're on a mission now to connect with teachers nationwide and license with teachers. So we wanted everything from how do you run a class to how do you do an open house, everything from first contact to last lesson. We wanted to put it all on paper. So all the teacher training materials that I've made for potential licensees, I just started using with my staff. And so everyone on our staff reads the open house script, and they're responsible to know it. With that said, if I'm in the building, I still do run the open house. I will make my staff. I mean, I'll pay my staff to stay late, but every couple weeks I'll say to one staff member, "Hey, can you stay 30 minutes late and watch me run this open house? I want you to hold this script in your hands while I run it, so you can see how I'm hitting these points." And so I do have a handful of people that are trained. Having training materials written out was a big help. If I didn't have that, I would probably just trust myself. I would never be able to have a day off, I guess. Yeah. And we have two locations. So I have a manager in my other location. He runs all the open houses. I completely trust him too. He's on the same level as me.
Am I just no one getting in the weeds, just to be really clear, because this kind of thing is like when I look at a Brooklyn Music Factory open house model, there's probably 5 staff that all have unique roles and responsibilities, from the welcome person to the actual teacher in the classroom to my job is to run drum circles in a community room. Jason's job is to run speed songs with parents while the kids are in the classroom. So those are like super unique roles with specific training to those roles. It sounds to me like you've got a beautiful model where there's literally just one position, and they can run the open house for the 30 minutes from minute 1 to minute 30. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Love it. Okay. So then I'm going to ask one more follow-up question, and then I know we're going to get in deeper here on the actual sales funnel piece of it. Because one of the first things I wrote in my notes as I was like scribbling down here, and you were just dropping wisdom bombs, I was like, okay, wait a minute. This is his closing moment. This is the Piano Express moment of closing. So can you just clarify exactly, does that mean I'm giving you a credit card right now? Am I just like tapping my card and paying the deposit on the spot and getting enrolled in a class? Or just define precisely if this is the entirety of the closing, or is this like a moment in closing, which then has a follow-up that's scripted as well?
Okay. So there's a couple different outcomes that can come from an open house. Obviously, no one is forced to sign up. And so we do get people that it's not a timeshare where we lock the doors and they can't leave the room until they say yes. I do believe in the free market, so we let people choose. And
we lock the door.
So there are people that say something along the lines of, okay, well, we'll have to go home and talk more about it and we'll call you.
Right.
And then there's people that are just like, show us the schedule. We're on board. We're coming next week. And so those are the outcomes that can come straight out of open house. And so we use Trello. We have a Trello board. And so people get moved as they move through the sales funnel they contacted us, they had an open house. We have 2 different pillars on the end. They have signed up. And then when they sign up, we have a couple internal marketing pieces that we give them over the next couple months, like just so they know how good they have it now that they're with us. Internal marketing, we'll have to come back and talk about that another time, Nate.
Nice. But, I love it. I love that topic.
There is a pillar of people who they have attended open house, but they haven't signed up. Right. And those people we will carefully contact a few times over the next couple weeks just to see if we can nudge them in. So that's where we leave it. Many people do sign up straight out of an open house. Before they leave in that 30 minutes, they are on board, but some people don't.
And to be clear, that the transactions actually happen, because this is one of the details that I think some of our listeners, they understand, but they might miss that it's not real until that parent actually hands you a card and says, I'm in.
Right.
They can say I'm in, but we all know that I'm a parent. We all know how fickle parents can be. They think they're in until, chess club or soccer practice appears.
Right. We take people's credit cards. We have all of our payments are automated. We have a software that runs all of our transactions, but yes, people hand over their card. We take their card, and we do wait until they actually attend their first class before we charge them, just out of respect. Totally. But we do have their numbers, and we have them on our schedule. We're holding their spots. We send them home with a business card with their first appointment written on the back.
I love that. It's like my dentist. Here you go, just so you know in 6 months where you'll be.
Greg, you mentioned earlier the idea of the sales funnel, the sales engine. You've alluded to it. You've talked about how you see the open house as superior, at least for your school. You told us how to run an open house, or kind of gave us the brief outline, which, if someone wanted to explore that further, I don't think we need to go into the weeds on that outline, because you've made an entire open house available, like a video of it, which I think is great. Someone can actually go and watch it, see how effective it is.
Right.
Let's dive deeper into that sales engine, that sales funnel, what your goals are, what you've done in the past that hasn't worked, things of that nature. Where would you start along that constellation of topics?
Okay. Well, I think that we've already talked about why I've gone from trial lessons to open house, but I want to talk more about the messaging, because this is where I think a lot of, I'll just say personally, I used to lose more of my late games than I do now. And it's because I didn't have my messaging right. Okay. I'm going to go way back. We've already said in this episode, Daniel, we've been good friends for a long time. Daniel and I ran a summer camp together. How many years ago? We started
17 summers ago.
Years ago.
Yep.
Okay. And we had to promote this, we shelled out $700. Now that's before inflation, kids. We shelled out $700 to sit at a booth in the mall, and we paid another $300. Funny, all these years later, I still remember how much we spent on trifold little pamphlets to hand to people. The good news of our summer camp: here's a pamphlet. Take this pamphlet, please. And all over that pamphlet, if I were to summarize it, it was how smart of a choice, how logical of a choice the Piano Express summer camp was for your kids. We can teach your kids how to read music in 5 days. And man, if they try that in weekly lessons, it's going to be like months. You're going to spend this much learning how to read music in weekly lessons, but you do it all in 1 week, because this is immersion. This is true immersion. This is like moving to Spain to learn Spanish. You're coming to our camp to learn music. Like, it made so much sense. And the marketing did not work. I was so dumbfounded as to why this fell on deaf ears. I was like, but it's so smart. And the people shopping at the malls were over 90% moms, 10% dads. Okay, those were the demographics. And the moms looked at our pamphlet, turned it over, looked at us. Who are you? We don't know you. Do you think I'm going to send my children to you? Do you think I'm going to trust you to take care of my kids for a week? And they just walk. They wouldn't say that, but I would see it on their face. They're like, you're a stranger. I don't know you. I'm walking away now. And what I have learned over the years is we do market to moms. Okay, our big guns at marketing are aimed at moms, and by and large, of course there's exceptions, but by and large, if you want to paint with a broad brushstroke, and I think if you're going to put marketing money into one message, one ad, you have to paint with a broad brushstroke to a certain extent. The message that wins for me, and I believe for the people listening to this podcast, the secret is figure out how to communicate that a family can trust you as an establishment and as a teacher. It's not about logic and reason. It's not about how you're the smart choice. It's about how can this family on an intuitive, instinctive level trust you as a teacher in your studio. Okay? All that to say, when a family comes in for an open house, I don't turn on the software right away and talk about how fast the kids are going to learn and how here's the national average and here's our average way up here. Here's the RCM scores that are national average and here's our scores for the last year. Look at how much smarter and better. Here's what these people are paying for their average scores. Here's what our people pay for way above average scores, right? Like you're paying less and you're getting more. I could start there, but I don't. I leave all that. I leave all of that. I don't even bring that up. I sit down on eye level and I enthusiastically learn the child's name. And then, I genuinely enjoy working with kids. I do love my job. I let that love become transparent. I put that on display. Okay? Right away, the families feel like they're in a safe place. Right away, like if I can get, I play to my strengths. I have a sense of humor, and so I'll make a joke. Sometimes I try to get the kids to laugh a little bit. If you watch the open house demo that will be attached here, what did I say? I looked at the kids. I said, "What are your names?" And they both gave me their names, Liliana and Alexander. I still remember because they both had 4 syllables. And then I looked and I said, "Oh, you guys brought grown-ups with you." I know why you brought grown-ups. It's because you don't drive cars. You needed drivers, don't you? And then they laugh. They're like, "Ha, drivers." Yeah, it's funny. And the parents laugh. Everyone has a little laugh. The kids smile. The kids relax. All of a sudden, there's this stranger that they kind of like. And I'm already starting to win my late game. I'm already moving the pieces into checkmate position. All right. So, Daniel, that's a long answer to what has worked and what hasn't worked. And I would say format doesn't matter. I could probably go back to the shopping mall with my booth now with better pamphlets and convert more. But the messaging, I've learned a lot about messaging. Logic and reason, it doesn't work as well as intuition and trust.
Any other questions, Nate? And I think, Nate, I'm probably going to kick it over to you to talk about your open house system here soon. But any other questions on what Greg has just said here, or maybe looking at things from a different angle, or bringing up questions maybe I have missed or opportunities I've missed?
I'm gonna go back to my notes here. I want to talk a little bit about what we do here at BMF with our open houses. And then I'm going to try to, if it's okay, Greg, can I sprinkle in some questions back at you or get feedback from you?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So, I mentioned that, we have a group class program in our mini keys and our Jam Band 101. So those are like songwriting, game-based programs, right? We also have private lessons. And in addition, we have our camps. And I think one of the mistakes we made in the past was we treated camp as its own effort. So we would have the camp open houses that would be separate from, say, an after-school open house, right? Which just now we're like, what are we doing? Because it gets back to the point you said, which is, you were talking about, you did just such a beautiful job of saying we have an opening sequence and a mid-sequence. Well, it takes a lot of investment and effort, right, to actually get people even to show up to an open house.
Yes.
So I was talking to my team earlier this week, and I was just like, guys, we're sort of putting in double the effort when we start splitting up our open houses into different outcomes, camp. Well, let's just sell out camp by putting all our effort here for a month or two. When in actuality, what we're going to do is combine them And as Jessica put it in the meeting, she's like, look, I just say, here's our approach and our method that has worked with families for 12 years. It's game-based. It's songwriting focused. And then what's interesting is she said, whether you enroll in mini keys, jam band, or camp, or private lessons, Jessica framed it as, that's just pure logistics.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a sort of I just sort of leave that there for our listeners to consider. Maybe Greg, Daniel, you guys have thoughts on that. But in other words, you're leading with your purpose, your values. You mentioned this earlier, and your method reflects that. And in our case, we apply that exact same method, whether you're in a one-on-one piano lesson or you're in mini keys. Obviously, they're leveled differently, and there might be slightly different support materials, but not that radically different.
Right.
Any thoughts on that, Greg, in terms of trying to combine multi into one?
Right,
and
different programs.
Right,
because people could look at me and say, well, Greg, you teach one instrument, you have one program,
one service,
we
right,
have
totally.
a niche, right? We are not trying to teach all instruments in all different formats. But I would still say, run one open house. Yes, Nate, anyone listening, run one open house, talk to the families. And part of an open house is it's not you talking to them about your program. It's you listening to them.
Yes.
Okay. If you guys, I wanted to put this in, if you watch the open house that I recorded, there were 2 kids that showed up, just 2. They were brother, sister. The parents tell me right away, right up front, the younger brother is not here for the trial lesson. He's just here because he couldn't be home alone. And the sister is a transfer, and she's had some note reading trouble, and they only want to be here for a few weeks to get a boost of confidence for her note reading. Okay. So it was kind of like, this guy is not really here. And if she joins, it's only going to be a few weeks. Okay. In the back of my mind, I listened, I heard it, but I was just like, he is here. And she stayed. Yeah. But I listened to them. I didn't blow them off. I want you guys to, anyone that's curious, do it in fast forward so it only takes 15 minutes, but watch my open house. And I will tell you now for the rest of the story, they did end up joining both of these children since that recording. They've gone to their first lesson. They both did join. The boy that wasn't there for the open house, he joined. The girl that was there for only a few lessons, just a few, she really needed an overhaul in her note reading, and the parents are completely bought in. They are signed up for the long run. So I turned that corner with them because I just honestly communicated what I believed. I just said, your younger son, I'm going to give him a chance to, since it's just us, let's let him interact. I don't want him to be bored. So I'll turn on the software for him and we'll just have him interact. Right. He ended up having a lot of fun. The parents you're going to see, if you watch this replay, you're going to see this moment where he gets a perfect score with my back turned. I didn't even help him. And you'll see the mom, she gets out of her seat. She's just like, right. And that was the moment. And then I just turn around and I casually say, all right, developmentally, he is ready for our program. Okay. So the mom came in and said, we're not here for him. But 15 minutes later, she's like, oh, wait, yes, we are. And with the girl, I was able to turn the corner and say, look, learning to be a stronger note reader takes more than a few weeks. And what she really needs is just an immersion, and we can give her that. Look at our whole track. Look at our course. They came to one class, and both of them are just bought in. So that came from me listening, not just talking to them, and earning their trust. Go ahead, Daniel.
And I have to say, what you have just described there in narrative form is really what I think are the 2 crucial things to growing a business. One, and this can't be taught, so I'm going to start with this one. The second one can be done, but the first is just the confidence. the belief in the system, and then that belief translated to kind of the way that you're being, even in talking to that family, whether it's over the phone or it's in an open house or something like that. Like when you can speak very confidently, and you have a really clear sense of what your quote unquote talking points are, what your script is, that comes across with a lot of authenticity to families. That's the first thing. That can't be taught. Yes. That has to be learned. That comes from actual belief in what you're doing.
I think, Daniel, that it's like piano, though. It comes with practice.
Of course.
If you know your vision, you know your purpose, and you practice speaking. I mean, heck, you can practice in the mirror. But yes, it can't be taught, but it can be practiced.
Absolutely. So in other words, we can't just hand someone a script or a email template and be like, okay, great, your studio is set for life now. There is an aspect of this. The second part is just the product itself. And I go back to this phrase that I probably dropped on the podcast a few times. It's a great quote from Naval Ravikant, and he says, you're doing sales because you failed at marketing, and you're doing marketing because you failed at product. And one of the things, I'm the marketing guy. I've been in kind of the somewhat public light in our industry for about 7 years now, and people kind of know me as the group lessons guy, the marketing guy. But the thing that I felt really made my marketing easy in my own studio and in the programs that you and I did together or other things that I've been involved in, it's always been at the back of it is a really great product that's easy to market, a really great system or program that kind of speaks for itself. And I know you said earlier, the whole rationality and that sort of thing doesn't really connect as well as kind of hitting people at that emotional level. But when I have a product in which I can point to it and say, let me tell you 18 stories of kids that have gone through this and and how they feel about this and how well they're doing, like that connects at the emotional level. But if you don't have a product that can produce those results, it makes your job a lot harder. And so just what I'm hearing is you tell that story is kind of those two things showing up there. There's a confidence on your part about the system. There's a facility and an ease with which you talk about it with the family. There's a humor, there's a casualness that really plays as authenticity because it is authentic. And then there's at the back of it, this child, you sit him in front of your tools for 15 minutes and he's getting a perfect score. And the mom can barely believe her eyes because of the experience she had before with her daughter. So I just think it's so important to point that out because if anyone's struggling with enrollment, anyone's struggling with whatever system they're doing, whether it's open house, free trial, phone consult, Zoom consult, 30-day lesson pass, at the back of all of it, and this isn't to undermine what we've said the whole episode, because obviously I think there are really great advantages to the open house system, but no matter what system you're using, if you have those two things, it makes your job a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. There's the cart and the horse. I would say that intuition and trust is the horse. That has to be first, and then product, the cart. Yes, you do want both, and I've never thought of it that way before, Daniel. But if you have the horse moving, and then I think you have the permission then to show people into the cart. You're like, here, look, these are our tools. This is our program. Wow.
Yeah. Greg, you said you mentioned or Daniel, you were talking about experiential knowledge. You can't learn this. It only comes through practice. Totally reminds me of a quote from a class I'm in where my teacher was saying, Nate, let's discern between practical knowledge and intellectual knowledge. Practical knowledge is experiential knowledge, and that's what's valuable to you. Daniel was here visiting Brooklyn like 5 weeks ago, and he saw my stack of all my business books, and it's like, how many of these have you actually read? And I'm like, well, I've read these over here, and then a bunch I haven't. But even those I've read isn't nearly as valuable as those I've highlighted and then attempted to put into practice.
Yeah.
And you follow that by saying, know your vision. This is one of these pieces that Daniel and I, actually, this is one of these areas where we oftentimes are working with school owners, or we get these questions where that's a wall, a resistance point, People don't want to spend enough time contemplating what they truly, truly want as their vision and purpose for their school. They want to get it done and put something on the website rather than being like, okay, I'm going to put something on the website and I'm going to sit with that and see if it really, truly speaks to me. So I just wanted to highlight your comment there because it's just so important. People ask, why do I need to spend so much time? Why do I actually have to read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why? I'm like, dude, you got to read it because it's a real deep contemplation and it has a ripple effect on the rest of your career with the school. And it's like, and then I want to point out a detail. I want to share a couple of just nuggets around a BMF open house. And then I think we should wrap on this because there's just so much in here that people probably have a notebook full of notes. So, I was going to share a detail around what you said around parents saw that their son, who wasn't even there for a trial class, they got stars and validation from the software. This is a really important detail because it's not Greg saying, look how awesome your son is. It's Greg believing in your son with his purpose and then having an external validation that goes along with it. That's a really important coupling for our listeners. So, to clarify, when BMF does, I gave the camp example. The version of an external validation in that story is the dry erase board with lyrics that got written by the student. Yeah. That's serving the same purpose as 3 stars.
Right.
Right? A parent needs to see that there's actually something being created and happening in addition to me or you, Greg, believing in their potential.
Yes. Yeah.
You did. I just wanted to highlight what you said because it's so badass that you have your, of course, I've seen your Piano Express software. It's totally awesome. You have this great methodology of where any level can work through it simultaneously. That's just beautiful. But there's also the reward when they do a micro success, like they pass a level, and you're using that in your open house.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like bridge building. Yeah. The bridge between our studio, like what we have to offer, and the threshold of what this family is willing to trust and believe. And I like how you're putting it, something tangible, something that we can all look at. I can say, I can casually say, okay, well, why don't we just turn on a machine for this kid? But what I'm implying is I'm trusting that he's going to enjoy this. And then then the proof is there in that tangible thing. That's a great way to put it.
So Greg, final question. And maybe you could just give us kind of like a bullet point list or something tangible that people can take away from this episode. If someone wanted to start an open house system in their school, what do you think their next action should be? And we don't need to go super deep on this. We don't need to, give like the 2-hour tutorial, but high level, what do you think they should know? What do you think they should do?
Okay. Well, if you want to do it my way, I don't trust my memory, especially when I am performing, when I'm in front of a family. I have to remember to say this and this and this. There's some things that I just never want to forget to say. So I would say, what is it that makes your program unique? Write those things out. What do you need a family to understand about your studio before they come to day one? Write those things out. And for us, that turned into our open house script. But for you, it could just be a simple list. I would say if you haven't done this recently, it is so important to just quiet down all the noise and listen to yourself and ask yourself, what is the vision and what is the purpose of your studio? What are you really offering? Because every music teacher out there is going to offer, I'm going to help your child put their hands on this instrument and make it turn into music. But what are you doing beyond that? What do you really have to offer? And how can you communicate that on a first impression in a tangible way that builds trust? Try to think about on those terms. And if there's something you can do in your first meeting with people, then add that in, include that in your script or your list. And then obviously the simple thing, the practical thing is schedule it. Figure out when in your schedule does it cause the least pain. You don't want to put it in your prime time, like right in the middle of where your busiest traffic is, but at a place that works for your community too. Like when can you block time every week for an open house? So block the time, make your points, and that's it.